So, do you want to know?
Yes.
Congratulations! It's a boy! Yay! Hi, I'm Estelle Griswold, executive producer of Planned Parenthood in Connecticut. For years, we have helped people plan out their family. Now, with birth control legal, you have the power to control your own destiny. Call 1-800-PREGNANT today.
Hello and welcome back to AQWH News. My name is Adele Manelp, and tonight I'll be covering the international segment about Ho Chi Minh. Last week on September 22nd, 1969, Ho Chi Minh, the Vietnamese communist leader, passed away. His name means he who enlightens, and he was born in 1890. In the early 1920s, he lived in France, and there he learned the ideas of communism. He brought them back to his home country in 1941 to help lead the Viet Minh independence movement. He wanted to remove the French from Vietnam, and he is seen as a hero in Vietnam for this. He became the Prime Minister of Vietnam in 1945 to 1955, and also the President from 1945 to 1969 until his death. The Chinese helped back Vietnam because they were communists, and they trained the Vietnamese soldiers in case they needed war. And on March 8th, 1965, U.S. combat troops arrived in South Vietnam to fight the communists. We started Operation Rolling Thunder, which was the bombing of North Vietnam by the U.S. Air Force and Navy. In Vietnam, he is seen as a hero among the Vietnamese people, but the spreading communism was seen as a negative. Now on to politics with Afia Topat.
Welcome to Politics. I'm Afia Topat. In relation to the Watergate scandal, let's take a look at Richard Nixon's past political career as it comes to a close. In the 1968 presidential election, Nixon portrayed himself as a figure of stability during a period of national unrest and upheaval. He appealed to what he called the silent majority of socially conservative Americans who disliked the hippie counterculture and the anti-war demonstrators. His running mate was Spiro Agnew. Nixon wanted to lower the crime rate and attacked what he called the surrender by the Democrats of the United States nuclear superiority. His campaign was aided by turmoil within the Democratic Party. Nixon appeared to represent a calmer society, and with regard to the Vietnam War, he promised peace with honor and campaigned on the notion that new leadership will end the war and win peace in the Pacific. He did not give specific plans on how to end the war, resulting in media imitations that he must have a secret plan. So, when Nixon took office, 300 American soldiers were dying per week in Vietnam. But Nixon approved a secret bombing campaign of North Vietnamese positions in Cambodia in March of 1969 to destroy what was believed to be the headquarters of the National Front for the Liberation of Vietnam. That's President Nixon in a nutshell.
Neil and Buzz, the President of the United States is in his office now and would like to say a few words to you. Over. That would be an honor. Go ahead, Mr. President. This is Houston out.
Hello, Neil and Buzz. I'm talking to you by telephone from the Oval Room at the White House. And this certainly has to be the most historic telephone call ever made. I just can't tell you how proud we all are of what you... For every American, this has to be the proudest day of our lives.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's a great honor and privilege for us to be here representing not only the United States, but men of peace of all nations, men with interest and a curiosity, and with the vision for the future. Honor for us to be able to participate here today. I'm going to step off the limb. That's one small step for man, Columbia, Columbia. This is Houston, AOS, over.
Houston, Columbia on the high gate, over.
Roger, the EVA is progressing beautifully. They're setting up the flag now.
July 20th, 1969, Apollo 11 was the first manned mission to land on the moon. The crew included Neil A. Armstrong, Michael Collins, and Buzz Aldrin. They were on the moon for 21 hours, 38 minutes, and 21 seconds. The Apollo 11 was launched from Florida. It fulfilled U.S. President John F. Kennedy's goal of reaching the moon before the Soviet Union by the end of the 1960s. Millions of people watched the event and the launch. Once the crew had gotten to the moon, they placed the American flag on the surface of the moon. During this time, another spacecraft, Luna 15, an unmanned Soviet Union spacecraft in lunar orbit, began its own descent to the lunar surface. It was launched only 3 days before the Apollo 11 mission. In a race to reach the moon and return to Earth, the parallel missions of Luna 15 and Apollo 11 were, in many ways, the climax of the space race that underlay the space programs of both the United States and the Soviet Union in the 1960s.
The people involved in the Watergate scandal were obviously Richard Nixon, John Dean, his close advisor, and the conspirators called the Watergate Seven. On June 17, 1972, 5 men are arrested at 2:30 a.m. trying to bug the offices of the Democratic National Committee at Watergate Hotel and Office Complex. This started the scandal. Later, in August, a $25,000 check is apparently assigned to the Nixon campaign, wound up in the bank account of a Watergate burglar. On November 11, 1972, Nixon is re-elected as president. On April 30, 1973, Nixon's top White House staffers and his attorney resign over the scandal. On June 13, 1973, the Watergate prosecutors find a letter addressed to John and Hill Richmond describing the detail of the planning of the burglary. A month later, Nixon had recorded. It had been found that Richard Nixon had recorded all conversations and telephone calls in his office, and Nixon refused to turn in the tapes to the authorities. On October 20, 1973, the Saturday Night Massacre occurred, where Nixon fired many of his staff and others resigned. On November 17, 1973, Nixon declares his most famous "I'm not a crook" speech, and he maintains his innocence in the Watergate case.
I want to say this to my television audience. I made my mistakes, but in all my years of public life, I have never profited from public service. I've earned every cent. In all my years of public life, I have never obstructed justice. And I think, too, that I can say that in all my years of public life, I welcome this kind of examination because people have got to know whether or not their president's a crook. Well, I am not a crook. I've earned everything I've got. Thank you.
In July of 1974, the Supreme Court rules unanimously that Nixon must turn over the tape recordings of his White House conversation. In the most famous tape, called The Smoking Gun, Nixon asked CIA officials to request the FBI to stop in the Bureau's investigation into the Watergate break-in. This is an act of obstruction of justice. A few days later, the House Judiciary Committee passes the first 3 articles of impeachment. On August 8, 1974, Richard Nixon becomes the first U.S. president to resign.
Now let's go back in time to August 15th, 1969, a day when music and history were intertwined. 600 acres of land will soon be occupied by 500,000 minds.
Hello, this is Mark Summerfield at the Woodstock Festival, August 18th, 1969. Here with me I have Rainbow Spirit and Daisy, 2 hippies I found enjoying the festivities of the last day of the concert. So I have some questions for you. Rainbow Spirit, how much does it cost? How much does Woodstock cost?
Well, for the whole thing, it was $24. But we cut down the fence, so we got it for free.
All right. So where are we right now?
We're in this guy's dairy farm, Max Yagster. It's 600 acres. It's giant.
How many people do you think came to this wondrous occasion?
I mean, there's thousands. I don't even know. Maybe 500,000 people.
Now, Daisy, what kind of acts were here that you enjoyed?
We saw Canned Heat, Grateful Dead, and Janis Joplin.
I've heard of Janis Joplin.
She's
Yes, I've heard that. So what have you done while you're here?
We visited the pond and skinny dipped.
That's fun. I've never done that before. It must be quite an experience. Well, how did you enjoy it?
I just like the music and the peaceful feeling. It was very non-violent and just like joining not only a music festival but just a joining of the culture and hippie culture.
Nature. One was nature's soul.
I feel that
Yes.
here.
It's a very
I
nice.
see you have a guitar. Would you like to?
I made a little song for the APWH channel.
All right.
Okay.
Please tell.
Butterflies are my favorite thing 'cause they're so beautiful. They like to fly so high up in the sky. Butterflies are my favorite thing. I wish I was a butterfly.
Wow, that was amazing. You have a future in music. You could be the next Jimi Hendrix. That's a girl. Well, that's all we have for today. This is APWH News with Rainbow Spirit and Daisy. Thank you. This is for you, Mom.
The Ramones were only one of many punk rock bands to start in the early to late 1970s. The punk rock music was characterized by being different than mainstream music, and they also created their own punk subculture, which consisted of their different types of clothing and political ideas.